Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to another video. You're listening to the only American in the entire world who lives in Chelyabinsk, Russia, and makes YouTube videos. So this is quite the treat for you. So, a while back, I made a video about how Russians should interact with Americans when they're traveling around America. What things they should avoid when talking to Americans. And I was asked to make a video in the other direction. So what Americans, and I guess to make this more inclusive, Westerners, how should they interact with Russians? What should they avoid? What should they keep in mind when they come to Russia? And I suppose this is directed for both tourists and people who intend to come to Russia for an extended period of time. So my personal experience, I've lived in Russia this is my third year now. So I know some things, but I'm not an expert. This is just how things seem to me. And of course, I've only lived in one city in Russia. I've traveled to other cities, but most of my experience is going to be coming from a place that most Russians have never been to, namely Chelyabinsk. So there's that. Right. A big thing that you want to, I guess, be aware of is that unlike a lot of European countries, Russia is different. Most people in Russia do not speak English on a level adequate for conversation. Yes, Russians do study English in school, but just as how Americans, they study Spanish and they study French and they study this and that. If it's just a school subject and that's it, you're not gonna be able to speak the language much. And it's the case that when Russians graduate, they just stop using English and their skills deteriorate drastically. So the people who actually are able to speak to you are going to be fairly westernized compared to the general population. Meaning that in order to get to that level, they probably have watched a lot of videos in English, a lot of TV shows, movies, this and that. So they are very well attuned with Western culture. And they are, in fact, not an accurate representation of the general population of Russia. They may argue about that. They may dispute it and think, oh, I know Russia. I'm a Russian. But talking to these people, it's not going to give you quite the same perspective as you would if you were to just talk to, others who don't speak English. Now, I assume that you guys are not conversational in Russian. Most people not in Russia aren't. It happens to be one of my passions, so yes, I am. But this is a thing to keep in mind, that if you are actually speaking to a Russian person and you're having a conversation, this is not the typical Russian person. Okay, so another thing that I want to make a note of is that compared to, I think, all cultures that I know very well, Russians are fairly resilient to offense. Just as they're hardy when it comes to the winter, you're going to find it really difficult to actually cause some problems with a Russian. they're gonna shake off things that other people just get really bent out of shape with. I mean, Americans, in my estimation, are very sensitive compared to many cultures. But Russians are on the other spectrum. They are very difficult to make angry. Like, I can make a German person angry a lot quicker than I can a Russian. And is this a positive thing? Is this a negative thing? Well, I think it's a positive thing, but yeah, that is something to think about. When I made this list, it was rather difficult because a lot of these things, I mean, yeah, it may not offend all Russians, but they are things that might cause problems. So, the first thing in my list, well, in Russia, there is assumed chivalry. Well, what does that mean? Well, put it this way. If you are on public transport and you take up a space, you take a seat where you want, and there's not space, there's not any extra space, and a woman steps on the bus or whatever it may be. If you are surrounded by other women and, you know, people older than you, if you don't get up and give this woman or old person a seat, these people very well may look at you and they might not be so happy. Now, you could just ignore it. I do ignore it sometimes, you know, when I'm tired and I don't want to get up. But generally, yes, I do attempt to conform to Russian culture, and I will get up and let a person take my seat. But this is something to take into consideration when you're taking public transport. Now, I'm not exactly sure about the conduct in America with regards to all this, because I never really took public transport in America. I always drove a car. But in Russia, it is highly socially encouraged for young men to give up their seats to nearly everybody, except for children. Well, actually, no, children too. I guess the only people that young men don't give up their seats for are teenagers, and probably male teenagers, and maybe middle-aged men. But besides that, it's kind of expected for you to give up your seat for everybody else. Speaking as myself, in my position. Also, I can give you a little story to think about. This happened in Ukraine several years ago. I was on the Black Sea, I spent like a week there. I was with a friend who is from Germany, but his family is Ukrainian, so he's not unaware of the culture, language, all that stuff. But anyways, we were hanging out with some girls at the beach, and there was, some type of rocks and pier next to the water. We had been swimming a bit, and yeah, so we went up on this pier and hanging out and stuff, and all of a sudden we hear some thunder and light. Well, you hear thunder, you see lightning, but we heard thunder. So being the highest point in the area, you want to get down. It's kind of dangerous to be up high in a thunderstorm. So immediately me and my friends, we hop off the pier as quick as possible, run across the open beach and to a kind of shelter thing that looks like a bus stop, but it's not on a road. So we did that real quick, but we didn't realize that the three girls who were with us were still on the pier, taking their time trying to climb down, all that stuff. And apparently, I'm kind of slow on the uptake. I didn't realize that, they were angry because we didn't help them down on the different rocks and stuff. So it's assumed that a man will do that for a woman and they will get angry if you don't. That happens in my life. So yes, male-female relations, chivalry is still quite a predominant feature in this culture. The second thing to understand is that people wear wedding rings on the right hand rather than the left, like in the West. I believe this is some kind of Orthodox tradition. Whatever, it's not so important, but that is something to know. As well, some young women who are unmarried will wear a ring on the finger that would normally signify that they are married. In Russia, like the right hand, the ring finger. And that seems kind of strange because in the West, basically nobody wears a ring on the finger that usually signifies that you're married. But it happens here in Russia, and I guess the idea is that they want to kind of deter unwanted male attention. Something to that effect. That's what I've gathered, at least. So yeah, don't assume that they are married if they're a young woman and they have what looks like a wedding ring. But also keep in mind that Russian women do marry rather young. The average age is 23, as far as I can tell. And men, young men do, but older men often don't wear their wedding rings in Russia. I've noticed. Not sure why, but that is kind of interesting phenomenon. Right. So the next one, and there's a kind of sub point connected with this one. So there is a stereotype that Russians are very alcoholic, and they love vodka and they love to drink a lot, and it's actually not the case. The general population, they're probably no more alcoholic than other European countries. It's just that there's kind of a section of society that is extremely alcoholic, that they are, of course, looked down upon by the average Russian. They have their own names and stuff. There's like gopnik, that's like kind of a low-life person who is maybe a bit criminal, and but those aren't necessarily the people I'd like to talk about here. What I mean is you'll encounter or see some kind of people that look like bums, they look homeless, and they are openly drunk in the middle of the day. And these people, so they are, I would say, more tolerated than some, I don't know, high crackhead homeless person is in America, would be. That would be the equivalent, I suppose. So these guys, they get on the bus and they're like falling, and I've even seen a guy fall and hit his head, and it looked like he was knocked out, but he eventually got up. The bus driver stopped. They asked him if he needs to go to the hospital. He kind of said no, whatever. But so he eventually just got off the bus and sat on a bench. And I looked at him. I was like, oh, well, I hope he's okay. I hope he doesn't have a concussion. But there are these people that are just openly drunk, and I would recommend that you do not interact with them. They might try to interact with you. They might try to say something, and if you don't speak Russian, obviously you don't understand. But under no circumstances interact with these people. It will not end well for you. It's not going to be productive, and generally, if you just ignore them, they will just keep going. Now, if you actually see a person that's hurt or needs help, yeah, have some human compassion. But just generally, you might see people who are heavily intoxicated, and I would recommend to just avoid them. And connected with this is when you're talking to a Russian person, I don't really see too many positive reactions if you make jokes about the stereotype of Russians being very alcoholic and such. They don't like it. They think it's not really funny, and it's not accurate. The average Russian, like I said, is not really an exception among other cultures and countries, at least comparing to the West. Right. Another big one, and this will cause problems if you don't adhere to this. Russians, I think they consider profanity to have a bit more weight than Americans do or Europeans. And this is especially true when it comes to Russian profanity. So just because you heard some Russian swear words on like CSGO or something, do not repeat these to people, because they will see you as they're not gonna like it. They don't think it's as funny as like in the West when people use curse words. They don't take it so lightly. They are more serious about it, and of course, as I said, there is still this section of society that I was talking about that will openly use curse words a lot and all that stuff, but it's nothing like in the West. The general population is not going to be very accepting. So don't use Russian profanity, and probably don't use English profanity either. They are obviously going to be more accepting with English curse words and stuff, but yes, it's definitely a cultural difference here. The next one, it's a bit weird, it's a bit stupid, but it is something that will elicit a reaction right away. If you whistle indoors, Russians will immediately tell you to stop, because they have a superstition that if you whistle, you're gonna lose money and all that stuff. And if you tell them, I don't care, they still will insist, don't whistle. Yeah, Russians do not like it if you start whistling inside. They don't take it as a sign of joviality or cheerfulness. They just get angry. Not like seriously angry, they just get a little, miffed. Right. The next one. This one will come across as a bit incongruous with our culture. So if you have a group of people, and there's both men and women in the group, and you are coming up to this group of people, and you want to say hi, introduce yourselves. Well, introduce yourself if it's just one person. It's very common, you'll see this, I'm not lying, it's very common for men to only shake the hands of other men in the group. They will purposely skip the woman in the group and just shake the hands of the men. And women apparently don't really care about this. You can shake a woman's hand in Russia, it's not a problem. But it is, if you do this, it is considered a bit atypical. And it's difficult to predict how she might react. Some of them might feel good about it. They feel that you're respecting them and stuff, but others might just feel a bit weirded out about the whole experience. So probably on the safe side, just don't shake people. Don't shake a woman's hand as a man. But if you really want to, yeah, sure, whatever, doesn't matter. Yeah, this one I did find a bit surprising. Right, the next one, it's more applicable directly to Americans because Americans tend to be a bit more political. You can talk to Russians about politics. They will give their opinion, but it's probably the case that their opinion is not going to align with yours. And you're probably not going to be able to convince him otherwise. So it's not going to be productive, and you might be kind of shocked at the things a Russian believes about politics. They do tend to be generally more conspiratorial, and they do, I'm not saying it's a bad thing or whatever, they do tend to be far more right-wing and skeptical of the liberalism in the West, the progressivism. Now, I tend to, agree with them, but this is something to consider. You might find yourself in an argument that you never really expected. And to tie in with this, the average Russian's opinion of, well, let's call it alternative sexualities is going to be very different than like what a European or American thinks. They're not very accepting of it. They are tolerant of it, they're not going to attack people or malign people, but they generally don't find the lifestyles of these other kind of sexualities to be compelling, especially with transgenderism and such. I have yet to meet a single Russian who agrees with the progressive opinion of transgenderism, which is very popular in the West. So that is something that's very different. I'm not the one judging or saying it's good or bad here, but I am informing you. But in general, Russians are, what I would say, culturally jaded with respect to politics and all that stuff. So they don't generally like talking about it. They're not offended to talk about it, but they just don't enjoy talking about it. And so a thing about the culture in Russia, you'll find that Russians can be highly self-critical. Meaning, like, Russians will say that products made in Russia are low quality trash. Or they'll think that, media in the West is way better. And they'll say, like, oh, it's, so terrible here. The West is like a paradise and all that stuff. But don't take these complaints that they have as an opportunity to start extolling the virtues of your culture, whatever it may be in the West. They will also criticize the West as well. And I'm not exactly sure, but I think when you start to elevate the West in their eyes, even though they are deprecating their own culture and country quite a bit, they don't like it when you actively extol yours. They don't look kindly on that. That's as far as what I can gather with my questionable interpretations. And another thing that may come up quite a bit, because when people talk to you in Russian and you say, oh, I don't understand, I'm a foreigner, well, they're gonna be very interested right away. If they can respond in English, they will say very often, well, where are you from? Yes, they'll ask that. But it will generally happen in the conversation that the person will ask, why are you here? They may put it in different words, but if I were to ask some person that I met in America who's not from America, I said, why are you here? He's kind of, to me, that seems extremely rude and offensive, and like, we as Americans, no, we don't do that. But I think just keep in mind that when a Russian puts it like that, in his mind, he can't comprehend why a person from the West or a person from America would come to Russia, especially a provincial city, which is where I'm in a provincial city, so not Moscow, not St. Petersburg. Why would he come here? Like, what is he doing? What does this place have to offer him or her? So it's just, they ask this because they are generally shocked by it. So don't think of it as they are hostile toward you. They're not. Russians are very open, sincere people, in my experience, and they're a lot of fun to talk to and make friends with. And I do recommend, if you have the opportunity, to come to Russia and check it out. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you next time.